'cause I don't give a fuck what you say. Yeah, I'ma do shit my way. So you can go kick rocks, I'ma stack bricks up, build what I want to make.
Yo, I got a lot of shit to say, so I'ma do this every day. I'll be writing things until I'm fucking buried in my grave.
$500 billion was handed access to our nation's checkbook and to Americans' most sensitive information. First, it was shutting the doors literally to the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, an agency that keeps Americans safe, protects people worldwide from disease and famine, and stands up to our adversaries like China and Russia. But their next target is reported to be a shutdown of the Department of Education, the very agency that ensures all kids across America get a good public education, and young people are set up with the skills to land a good-paying job. It ensures that schools serving low-income students receive the high-quality education they deserve, and students with disabilities get the services that they are required to receive and have the opportunity to thrive. And we are watching before our very eyes Russell Vought and Elon Musk illegally trying to shut it down. And if that wasn't enough, reporting today shows that the DOGE is coming after the Department of Labor, the agency that supports apprenticeship programs so people can earn while they learn and land good-paying jobs. It's the agency that makes sure that big corporations are held accountable for stealing wages from workers. It's the agency that ensures workers on factory floors are safe on the job. Again, this is what we are watching Russell Vought and his billionaire pals put in jeopardy. Donald Trump has apparently given an unelected billionaire, Elon Musk, who is, again, literally the richest man in the world, free rein to run roughshod through Americans' most sensitive information. He has the ability to put programs people need on the chopping block with absolutely no transparency or accountability for what he's doing, much less any legal authority. The president claimed he would lower prices for families on day one if elected. But how does taking childcare away lower prices for families? Does taking away people's treatment for opioid use disorder help their lives? How about cutting firefighters? Will that lower costs for families and keep them safe? Raising costs on families, all while Republicans work to jam through big tax breaks for billionaires, is not what Wisconsinites want. Billions in tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy in exchange for programs that my constituents need to feed their families, pay their rent, and stay healthy is not a good deal. I've always said that I will work with anyone to deliver for Wisconsin and invest in the programs that my constituents rely on. But bipartisanship is a two-way street. We have to be able to trust one another that what gets signed into law is actually going to get implemented. And right now, we are watching Elon Musk, Trump's billionaire cabinet, and Donald Trump himself flout the law and cut funding from bipartisan programs that my constituents rely on. And all this brings us back to President Trump's nominee to run OMB, who has openly called for the president to defy Congress and take control of federal funding decisions that are constitutionally vested in the legislative branch. He said he supports the illegal practice of impoundment, a strategy to circumvent the checks and balances that are baked into the fabric of our Constitution. Mr. Vought even said during his confirmation hearing last week that President Trump believes the Impoundment Control Act is unconstitutional, and he agrees with that assessment. What that means is he thinks the president is free to withhold appropriated funding without limitation. And let me be clear, everything that we have seen in the last 2 weeks, including examples that I've provided about the chaos and confusion across Wisconsin. This is just the first step. It's the tip of the iceberg. But in the future, Russell Vogt will just withhold funding at the beginning for anything that he doesn't like or that Elon Musk posts about on X. What this means is Congress could pass an annual funding bill that maybe increases funding for Head Start, which we actually pretty routinely do. Russell Vogt thinks he can say to Congress, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going to eliminate Head Start and not allow any future grants to Head Start programs. Maybe Russell Vogt will ignore Congress and the laws we pass and eliminate or significantly reduce funding for opioid treatment programs or the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or whatever he feels like opposing that day. Even setting aside the very real impact I think cutting funding for programs like these would have on families and communities across the country, I hope my Republican colleagues will stand up against this blatant disregard for this body. How are we supposed to negotiate annual appropriation bills when an administration is saying it can just ignore what we do? If confirmed, Russell Vogt would be the tip of the spear in his fight to take away funding for programs families rely on and give it to billionaires as a tax cut. We know that this administration intends to make every effort to override Congress's power of the purse. We've already seen Mr. Vogt do it. During Mr. Vogt's time as OMB director during President Trump's first term, the agency withheld roughly $214 million in security assistance to Ukraine, which the Government Accountability Office later found violated the Impoundment Control Act. I know it can be difficult to flout the party line, but we are not just talking about party politics anymore. We're talking about our Constitution. So many of my Republican colleagues declare themselves to be originalists when it comes to our Constitution, sworn supporters of the interpreting this document as our founders intended when it was written. Well, I can tell you, if there's one thing that was crystal clear when our founders conceived this nation, it is that no one person should have absolute power. The repeated brazen power grabs that we've seen by this administration could not be more out of step with the foundational checks and balances laid out in our Constitution. And while my words might not matter to you, I hope the voices of your constituents who I know are being adversely impacted by this administration's actions will. I, for one, will not sit idly by as President Trump forfeits control of our government to billionaires. I will stand up for Wisconsin workers and families and push back on policies that are hurting the people I represent. And I'm calling on my colleagues to do the same and oppose Russell Vogt's nomination. Otherwise, we could be running headlong towards a constitutional crisis. And it's up to all of us to make sure that people come out on top in that fight. In times of conflict and hardship, the Senate has served as the conscience of this nation. Now's our chance to stand up to this administration and show that we are here to represent the American people and not billionaires. And I yield.
Mr. President.
The Senator from California.
Mr. President, It's getting late. It's getting late, too late for some of the people we serve to even be awake, though I imagine many are. Not by choice, a mother in the Central Valley is awake, staring at her kitchen table, trying to work out where her sick child can receive the medical care that child needs, now that a federal grant supporting the only rural health care center in her community is in limbo. A federal employee is awake, trying to figure out how they'll make the rent next month if they're laid off. Maybe they spent a few decades serving this country overseas and were just called back home. Now what? People around the world are awake, watching humanitarian help. That means their next meal or safe harbor from disease has disappeared, wondering why, in their time of most need, their longtime ally has decided to abandon them. Because the Trump administration has turned so many of our lives into a series of question marks. Because this president and his cronies like Elon Musk and Russ Vought are putting politics and profits over people's lives, over people's livelihoods, over lives. They're creating chaos, and then somehow, worst of all, they're gloating about it. Imagine gloating about acts so callous. Chaos seems to be the watchword with this administration, but the chaos is not a consequence of this. The chaos is the goal. The chaos is the purpose. By throwing everything at the wall, they can create confusion. They hope to muddy the waters while opening the floodgates. Unconstitutional executive orders, illegal memos, illegally accessing private citizens' data, you name it. The scope and the speed of these actions is almost impossible to comprehend, and the impact is incalculable. This is all part of a larger effort to consolidate power, every possible power, in the control of one man, well, maybe two men, so they can plunder the country to benefit themselves and their billionaire buddies. And what is this all about? What we've witnessed in the first couple of weeks of this administration? What do these disparate acts have in common? What is the through line? What is it that the seizure of data belonging to millions and millions of Americans by Elon Musk, what does that have in common with the efforts to shutter development assistance, American development assistance around the world through USAID? What does that have in common with efforts to fire top prosecutors at the Justice Department and purge FBI agents at the Federal Bureau of Investigation? What does this have in common, too, with pardoning violent criminals who attacked this building? What does it have in common with a funding freeze and then a memorandum to implement the funding freeze and then the repeal of the memorandum and all the confusion that has caused? What does the mass deportation order have in common with all of this? What is the story of what they're doing here? How does this all fit together? And it fits together in this way. This is an effort to try to consolidate power, all the power of this government, in the hands of Donald Trump and a few of his hand-picked, very wealthy billionaire friends. It is designed to consolidate that power to essentially take the resources of this country and enrich themselves and their friends. An effort to enrich themselves which would not be possible, will not be possible, if our system of checks and balances work. But if they can somehow take apart these institutions, if they can somehow persuade or demand or cow the people in this institution and the House of Representatives and the courts and the Supreme Court, if they can prevent us from playing our institutional role as a check and balance, then what is left between them and the Treasury? Nothing. Nothing. And so this is the goal. Discredit the government, dismember checks and balances, so that they can raid the till. make government purposely dysfunctional, discredit every institution so that all is left is the power of the strong man and the wealth of this country can be stripped away. Checks and balances be damned. Congressional authority be damned. The president wants to steamroll all of that, and at the moment it appears he is succeeding. But Donald Trump can't do this on his own. He needs enablers to subvert our laws, enablers to divert congressionally approved funds. Sure, everyone knows Elon Musk, but it's not just Elon Musk. And today we consider the nomination of the systems engineer to lead the Office of Management and Budget, probably the most important agency no one has heard of. And that engineer, that architect of this effort to strip the country of its resources so that it can be plundered by the president and his wealthy friends, the architect, the engineer of this, the one who will make the trains run on time, the guy that stops the train to allow the highway robbery of that train, is a man named Russ Vought. We all recall Project 2025. Project 2025. Russ Vought helped to write it. That funding freeze, Vought helped orchestrate the plan for it. And the slew of outrageous, dangerous actions taken by this administration over the past several weeks were in many ways a direct result of Vought and his plan to dismantle and destroy the government in the service of Donald Trump and his wealthy friends. One analysis found that 2/3 of the executive orders Trump has signed come from, that's right, Project 2025. Russ Vought doesn't believe in government except as a vehicle to take from the poor and take from the middle class and give to the wealthy people who should be running everything. He doesn't believe in the simple idea that we, the people, compromise, or we, the people, compose our institutions. We, the people, are the government, a government that's supposed to be for the people, not for a handful of very wealthy people. No, Russ Vought believes in dismantling that government of the people, piece by piece, brick by brick, until what remains is a hollowed out bureaucracy that serves the interests of the wealthy and abandons everyone else. To make it so small they can drown it in a bathtub. Because that's what this is all about. This is all about taking the nation's resources for themselves. It is about using the infrastructure, the architecture of the government to enrich themselves. This is about plunder. That's what they're trying to do. The last few weeks are not incompetence. It isn't mismanagement, although there's plenty of that. No, this is a deliberate effort to break the federal government so completely that people lose faith in its ability to function at all. And when people lose faith in the government of the people, when they stop believing that it is for the people, that's when the real damage begins. That's when they can dismantle the safety net, program by program. That's when they can make the people beholden to the strong man. That's when federal workers, scientists, economists, social workers, public health experts are replaced with unqualified ideologues or driven out entirely. Turn the federal workforce, or what's left of it, into an arm of the president, beholden only to the president. No more oath to the Constitution, but an oath to the person of the president. A loyalty oath demanded of our federal employees. That's when the next disaster, whether it's a pandemic, a financial collapse, or natural disaster, becomes unmanageable because the very institutions designed to respond have been gutted. Because that is their end goal. Not just to shrink the government of the people, but to sabotage it. to make it dysfunctional, to make it ineffective, to paralyze it, and then to turn around and say, hey, see, it doesn't work. The government of the people doesn't work. Because, of course, they don't want it to work except to the degree that can be used to take the resources of the American people and give it to their wealthy friends and to large corporations to distribute every possible dime amongst the privileged few and not working families. This is why they are elevating Russ Vogt. Because when you need someone to dismantle the very machinery of governance, to turn the government of the people into an engine of destruction rather than an agency of stewardship, Russ Vogt is your guy. And now he has a second chance to make sure that when that mother in the Central Valley reaches for help, there is nothing there. We're seeing, of course, Head Starts around the country, the Head Start program. Wonder whether they're going to be able to open their doors the next day. Wondering what's going to happen to their support. And of course, all the parents that have their kids in Head Start are wondering what the future holds for their kids. But the view of this administration is, hey, that Head Start's getting valuable money. They'd rather give to themselves and to their wealthy friends. And if it means the sacrifice of those kids in the Head Start, well, that's just the price you have to pay for oligarchy. Russ Vogt is your guy. A second chance. He has a second chance now to turn Social Security and Medicare into bargaining chips in a political game that none of us have agreed to play. Keeping seniors up at night worrying whether a Social Security check might not make it to them after all. He has a second chance to rewrite the rules in a way that ensures the wealthy and well-connected are taken care of, while everyone else is left behind. We should be clear about what this nomination represents. Russ Vogt wants to oversee the erosion of the very services that millions of Americans rely on every day, every single day. To lead the charge to remake the United States into a country where people are left to fend for themselves, where the government doesn't work because they don't mean it to, they don't want it to. They don't want a government of the people or a government by the people or a government for the people. They want a government of them. They want a government by them, and they want a government for them. But let's be very clear. It does not have to be this way. We can reject this vision. We can reject this nominee. We can reject the idea that our government exists only to serve the powerful or to punish the vulnerable, and we will reject it. Because if we do nothing, if we simply sit back and let Russ Vogt take the reins of OMB once again, then we will be complicit in the destruction that follows. So let's take a closer look at the last few weeks. Let's take a closer look at Donald Trump and Elon Musk's hostile takeover of the federal government and the targeting of our institutions one after another over and over again. Let's take a closer look at this effort to gut critical programs to pay for their enormous tax breaks and what that means for all of us. And let's start with access to your personal data. As of today, Elon Musk, an unelected billionaire, I think maybe the wealthiest man in the world, with a vested financial interest in this administration's success. You would think that being the wealthiest man in the world or one of the top wealthiest people in the world, that would be enough. But no, he has a vested interest in the administration's success and billions in government contracts, because apparently the billions he has already are not enough. And he has deployed a team of loyalists to infiltrate government agencies to help with the plunder of the public fisc. So let's think about that for a moment. Let's try to take this in. The world's richest man has brought in his loyalists, some of them apparently just teenagers, to breach federal departments, to access sensitive data, classified information, and who knows what. And are we supposed to think that's okay? Are we supposed to pretend this is normal? To have the wealthiest man in the world run roughshod over private data, over our agencies? Are we supposed to act like this is anything other than what it is, a blatant and unconstitutional grab of power and our personal data? A takeover of government by a billionaire who has decided that the rules and laws don't apply to him. Our national security doesn't matter. But why? Why go to these lengths? And again, we have to follow the money. Trump's 2017 billionaire tax cuts, the ones that handed corporations and the ultra-wealthy an unfathomable windfall while exploding the deficit, are set to expire this year. And Elon Musk and his buddies want to keep these tax cuts in place. And if they're going to do that, then Donald Trump and Elon Musk, Donald and Elon, have to find $4 trillion somewhere. So where do they look? Not to the billionaires who profited from these tax cuts, not to the corporations that benefited the most. No, they're going to go after money where the cuts will hurt the most. They're going to go after what they consider low-hanging fruit. After all, what is the power of the poor? What is the power of even the middle class compared to the power of the oligarchs? They're going to go after where the money is easiest to grab. So they're going to go after Medicaid. They're going to go after Medicaid. After all, it's just seniors or folks who are disabled or folks who are working class or struggling to get by and reliant on it for their health care. What is that weighed against more money for Elon Musk and his friends? What is that in the balance with Donald Trump and his desire to enrich himself? There was a press conference about a week and a half ago. It kind of got lost in the blizzard of everything happening. But I found it very striking. At this press conference, the president was asked by a reporter whether he was going to stop trading in his own personal interests and his meme coin. And what followed was this discussion between the president and this reporter while the cameras were rolling, where the reporter says, you're making a lot of money. And the president asks, well, how much money am I making from this meme coin? Well, a lot. Now, I don't know what the exact language of this dialogue was, but it was blatant. It was so out in the open. I mean, it takes your breath away. I'll remember, because it seems quaint, the beginning of the first Trump administration, when you might remember he had that press conference and he was talking about how he was, going to make sure that his business interests were somehow separated from his interests as president or the country's interest. And he had those stacks of, binders or white paper. And I don't think anybody knew what was in those stacks of paper, whether it were just blank paper, but at least there was a superficial effort to suggest that he was going to have some walling off of his personal financial interests. Of course, what we saw those 4 years was there none of that walling off. There were Gulf nations that were essentially paying tribute by staying in his hotels and all kinds of other graft going on. But now there's no effort to even hide the profit taking with this meme coin or the distribution from his social media platform to people like Kash Patel. I mean, the grift is out there right in the open. But that's really still small potatoes compared to the ability to raid the Treasury,